Okay. Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devyamatriksha Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindevyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Stapakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupini Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Devo Maheshwara Guru Reva Param Brahman Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Om Saraswati Namo Nityam Bhadrakalye Namo Namaha Om Bhadrakali Namo Nityam Saraswati Namo Namaha Veda Viranga Vedanta Vidyastana Evacha Sri Ganesha Sharada Guru Bhyo Namaha Guneshwar Devye Namaha Jai Ma Jai Ma. Very happy to see everyone again and to have our first class in several months. I think the last class was at the end of October, because then we had some holidays, and then myself and Ananda went to India for most of November, and then came back with some health struggles. It took us a little while to recover, and then Swami Ambikananda went to India, and Ushama went to India. Swamiji is back. So we've been trying to get this going again, but we didn't just have the mental energy for a little bit, and then on top of that, once we recovered, the more recent struggle was just not enough time to get all our duties done. So finally, I'm very happy to start again, and the schedule's up on the Kali Mandir calendar as well as the Ramakrishna Seminary calendar of all the dates and everything. So the plan is we don't have any holidays coming up on Wednesday, so we have the next 3-4 months, hopefully, just that the Gita class will go on without any restriction, God willing. So what are we doing? Where do we left off? Since it's been so many months, we may have to do a little bit of a recap. A great demon has taken over the world, named Tarakasura. When Sati left her body, when Sati disappeared and consumed in the yogic fire, Shiva went into meditation, withdrew his mind from the world, and in that absence of this sabhagya, the auspicious presence of Shakti, in that darkness, in that void, in that inauspicious situation, a great demon came up. And that demon took over the hellish realms, and took over the earthly realms, and took over the divine realms, kicked the gods, as per the story, out of heaven. The gods went high into the Himalayas and performed austerities, right? We described a lot of those different practices, and then had a great vision of her, first as a pillar of light. They became overwhelmed by that vision. Then she took on a beautiful form of a goddess, as described as Bhuvaneshwari, who is the main deity of the Devi Bhagavatam, definitely the deity of the Devi Gita, and also the primary deity, supreme deity in general of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, the parent text from which the Devi Gita comes from, right? Overwhelmed by seeing her beautiful form, we spent quite a bit of weeks going into every detail of every iconographic detail of her form. They became choked, not being able to speak. Their eyes completely, their voices choked, and their eyes gushing with tears, their body bent with devotion. But slowly they pulled themselves together, and without being able to find the words, their own words failed them, but they took recourse to the words of the scriptures. And we've discussed also that this is a great teaching, actually, that why we memorize and study mantras and verses. In times of need, we may not know what to say, but we do know what to say. We can say Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarvarata Sarike Charanye Trambake Gauri Narayani Namaste. By learning mantras like that, these mantras will come to us, and they have so much meaning. They have so much theology and philosophy and sentiment and devotion and poetry. They put into words very often what we're feeling and thinking, what we should be feeling and thinking, but we don't know how to say. And sometimes it's not what we're feeling and thinking, but in that moment, these words will direct our feelings and thoughts, right? To when we get overwhelmed, we can channel them through expressions of devotion and reverence and adoration and theological contemplation. So these verses are very meaningful. So not finding words. Not finding these words, they took recourse to the words of the scriptures. So let me look at. I'm going to share a screen. Tell me if I haven't done this in a while. So you can see that screen. Okay, good. Let's go back a few. So seeing her, the embodiment of compassion, the entire host of gods bowed low, unable to speak, choking on tears and silence. Struggling to regain their composure, the necks bending in devotion, their eyes brimming with tears of living joy, they glorified the world mother with hymns. And then we spent the last 3-4 meetings, I was going to say the last 3-4 weeks, but it was months ago, the last 3-4 meetings, going and dissecting or meditating upon enjoying the nuances within these famous verses. So this verse that we discussed with quite a bit of length is a very well-known verse. It appears, we know it mostly, maybe you also know it mostly from the Chandi, from the Devi Mahatmyam. Namo Devye Mahadevye Shivaye Satatam Namaha Namapakritre Bhadraye Niyataha Pranataha Smatam. Hail that goddess, hail to the goddess, we bow to the goddess, the great goddess, the auspicious one, always we bow to you. Hail to nature, to the primordial one, we humble ourselves attentively before you. And so we described the general meaning of this hymn, but also some of the more symbolic meaning given by some nice rishis who have given some profound commentary, modern times also, in ancient times, on some of these verses, describing the Devi as the fivefold aspect of Ishvara, that of creation, sustenance, and destruction, revealing and concealing, kind of hidden within this verse. Perhaps we gave that kind of the tradition of exegesis, kind of a tantric, esoteric exegesis of a verse, right? And the verses from the Chandi are famous for such, can be very famous for such interpretation. So, but we pointed out, if you remember, that this is not the only place that this verse appears. It appears in the Chandi, right, in the Devi Mahatmyam, but it also appears in a Vedic hymn, right, in a text that's known as has become known as the Devi Upanishad. There are Devi Upanishads, a group of Upanishads, I think 9 famous ones, there may be more, but generally we think of the Devi Upanishad, a cluster of 9, also symbolic number of the mother. Let me find my verses here real quick, hold on. So in the Devi Upanishad, so those verses in Devi Upanishad are also known by another name. But just remind you because we're still in this cluster of verses called the Devi Atharva Shirsha. This is the crown jewel, or the crown of the Atharva Veda. So this is an Atharva Veda text. That the Devi Upanishad is an Upanishad of the Atharva Veda. It's known collectively as the Atharva Shirsha, but it's primarily made of verses taken from the Rig Veda, right? So these are all, and the Rig Veda is an older collection. So most of these mantras actually are found in the Rig Veda, right? And then collected in the Devi Upanishad in the Atharva Veda, right? And also we find this one in the Chandi, in the Devi Mahatmyam, right? And why do we find it here, right? We find it here, of course, in the ancient world, the gods would have known these mantras and would have recited these mantras, right? So these are the mantras they knew. They knew these Vedic mantras to the goddess, right? But we also, let's take a little bit the author. Of course, we believe the gods are the authors, the ones who compose these beautiful mantras in this moment. But the author of of the text in front of us is the Devi Gita. Whoever the authors were, right? Traditionally, we think it's Vyasa or Sutta and things like that. But whoever they were, this verse is important. These verses are important because they're Vedic verses, It shows that this text, that the Devi Gita, the Devi Srimad Devi Bhagavatam, and therefore the Devi Gita, is equivalent to the Vedas. It's equivalent to the Upanishads. It has the term we used in our last classes. It has a pedigree, has a Vedic pedigree. It's ancient. It's authoritative. It's Vedic, right? And that's a big claim for a text, for a considerably later claim, a later text. Historic, I mean, later than some. It's still an old text, but not as ancient as some of the texts that it's quoting from. And it's connecting the goddess with the Vedic and Upanishadic ideas of like Brahman and the Atman, and these ideas that are very beautifully developed theologically and philosophically in the Upanishads, right? The Bhuvaneshwari is going to be that goddess. She is that Brahman, right? This text is Vedic because, and see, it's pulling from mantras of the Vedas. So anyway, so this is a little background because we're still in that in this mode. The next at least the next three verses, the three verses that we'll talk fresh today, will still be from this Atharva Veda, Atharva Shirsha, Devi Gita, Devi Upanishad. So the next verse is Tam Magni Varanam Tapasvi Jwalantim. This is also a beautiful known verse. We gave too much esoteric interpretation last time. If the recordings are there. To her the color of fire, blazing like the sun with ascetic power, who is worshipped for attaining the fruit of action. To her the goddess Durga, I go for refuge. Hail to that raft of swift crossing. So again, this is it's a Vedic mantra, a Rig Vedic mantra, Atharva Veda mantra, showing that the goddess being worshipped, the goddess who the gods are seeing in this moment, Bhuvaneshwari Devi, right, is the same goddess that's worshipped in the Vedas, who is non-different from Brahman. The previous mantra describes various her sovereignty, the different the fivefold aspects of Brahman, and like this, right? Of fivefold aspects of Ishvara. Here, this mantra describes her as Durga, right? And quite esoterically, but so she's Durga. So Bhuvaneshwari, we've talked about this before, but not in a while. She's in this text. She's the Mahadevi. She's the great goddess. She's not just a goddess, right? Because Bhuvaneshwari is a goddess. There's many goddesses in the Hindu pantheon, in the goddess pantheon, many gods, many goddesses, but they're developed the idea of the Mahadevi, the great goddess, to which all the various goddesses are either her or aspects of her or functions of her or servants of her, because there's still a hierarchy, right? So here describing her in Vedic terms and describing her as Durga, right, is showing that that this is the one that we know as Durga, the one that's glorified in the Vedas, is also Bhuvaneshwari whom we're seeing, right? This is establishing I believe it's establishing Bhuvaneshwari as the Mahadevi, right? Using Vedic mantras to do so. So this is the verse for today. So this is also that same section. This is verse 10 of the Devi Upanishad. Right, and if you're looking for, if you have nowadays, you can do this online. Before it was so many books trying to analyze, trying to find the way things are numbered in Vedic compendiums, right? But this is from the Rig Veda, originally from Book 8 of the Rig Veda, hymn 100, verse 11, right? And so you can find it. You can click around and find it online, and you can find some interesting breakdown and a few comments perhaps online. There's not much out there, but this is this is for references, right? So it's an Upanishadic mantra. Some mantras, especially the mantras that get repeated in later Puranas, like the Chandi. Of course, Chandi. I mean, the Devi Mahatmya is the Markandeya Purana is an early Purana in a certain sense, but I mean, post-Vedic, later in the Vedas. There are a lot of mantras that get shared are pretty simple. The previous two mantras, they're external, simple meaning it's more or less clear. We may be wrong a little bit, but Sanskrit has its own rules, right? So what something generally means, then we can then take, what do we think it means? Is there a hidden meaning? Is there some implied meaning? But generally the meaning of the previous mantras is fairly well known, more or less, right? And the next two mantras after this are going to be mostly just glorification of the goddess under different names and identifying her as different forms of the goddess. So it's pretty simple. But here it's a little more, this one's a little more complicated. It is also, like the previous one identified the goddess we're talking about as Durga. Here it's Vak or Vācam, right? So this is also an important Vedic goddess, right? Vācam, the goddess of speech, right? But the meaning is not that clear. We, with our limited abilities in Sanskrit, which is very limited, and Swami Bhajanananda is considerably greater, but still limited understanding of Sanskrit, we've been analyzing it, right? And we'll start with, we're giving the translation of C. Mackenzie Brown, as we're generally using, right? And his translation is very similar to many people's translation of this text, right? But there's other translations of this text that are very dissimilar to this, that understand the words very differently. And I don't have enough subtlety and technicality in Sanskrit to know which one's exactly right. We'll go with this, and I'll give some other flush it out as we go word by word as possible other meanings, right? But this is, and why is that? This is a really old Vedic poem, right? These are verses of praise. These are operatic verses, liturgical verses of praise, right? Full of poetry, but poetry that we may not understand, right? There's some, I know I have some interesting translations of Rig Vedic hymns. I'm forgetting just now who did it. It's escaped my mind right now. A well-known, popular Western author. It may come to me as I keep going, right?
Wendy Dowager?
What's that?
Wendy Dowager?
No, not her.
Okay.
But not so scholarly, but anyways, but the interesting thing about it, right, it's very different than hers, for instance, right? Hers is a little more literal, right? But he's assuming, the author or the translator is assuming that this is a different type of poetry from an ancient time of a deep mystical nature, coming from a different place, and therefore his translations are considerably different. I don't know if they're more correct, right? And a translation of a thousands of years old hymn, right? It's tricky, right? But at that point, this is one verse that is not an easy one to get a clear meaning, right? So we'll just read an unclear meaning and just dive in, right? Let's see what we can. It still has, I think it will still have some meaning for us, because this is, like I said, an ancient verse from the Rig Veda, an ancient text, repeated in the Atharva Veda, right? And here found in the Devi Gita, right? So it goes back to the Vedic, but here I had to correct myself a little bit, or restrain myself, because I know these verses more. I mean, I know of these verses. This is one of the ancient, there's not many accessible Vedic hymns to the goddess for us who love Sanskrit Vedic hymns and love the goddess and want the Vedas to have lots of goddess stuff in it, right? So we're always searching for goddess things, right? And so we know the Devi Upanishad. We know of it. We cite it sometimes. We listen to it. We refer to it, and we always think, oh, this is an example of a goddess, the goddess being worshipped, goddess being revealed in the Vedas, which is to us is very important, right? To have, with again that pedigree of that ancient type of thing. But our commentary shouldn't be on the Devi Upanishad. Right, because I mean, we could give. I mean, it's hard to find commentary on the Devi Upanishad. If you do, please share it with me. I spent some time this week trying to find something inspiring that I could pull from a little bit. But we shouldn't be trying just. Our class is not on the Devi Upanishad of the Atharva Veda. It's on the Devi Gita of the Srimad Devi Bhagavatam. So we have to understand that this verse, in its present context, serves a purpose. Right, and understanding that purpose, or trying to focus a little bit on some understood purposes, right, will give us, I think, what we may be able to, what we can benefit from reading this verse. even if it's not identical to an ancient Vedic understanding of the verse, right? I'm using that a little bit as to give a little courage to understand the verse, where it takes place in the Devi Gita. I believe these verses are to show the ancient Vedic character of the text, the ancient Vedic character of the goddess, and establishing the goddess as Mahadevi, right, as the great goddess, right? And then so it's qualities of the Mahadevi, right? This is what the Devi Gita is revealing. So another one of these great goddesses, Vedic goddesses, Vācam, Devi Vācam, Devi Vach, right here he's translated as the goddess, goddess speech, right? So Vācam is the name of the goddess, and it means speech, right? We get cognate words like vocal from this, right? You know, we have that the very act of speaking is the name of the goddess is named speech, which means speech, if we reverse it, is a goddess. Not that there's a goddess that presides over speech. Speech is a goddess. And I think that's one of the main points of why I focus on Vācam, right? I've included the graphic for this verse, right? Is it's called the Vach as Virat-swarupa. And the word Virat-swarupa, viśva-rūpāḥ, actually is in the verse, right? It means universal form, although it probably doesn't mean that in this verse, the way it's going to be understood. But it's showing Vach in a very tantric and universal way, right? And the original, if you're interested, is in it's probably a 19th century Rajasthani painting, the original, the National Museum in New Delhi. It makes me want to go to the National Museum in New Delhi to see their collection. So there's a beautiful painting. But you see that painting, it's a viśva-rūpāḥ, it's a Virat-swarupa is a universal form that within her all gods exist, all the worlds exist. That's often shown iconographically within her body with all these gods. That's a common, that you have the cow and this and that, and you have Indra and Ganesha and the sages and Vishnu's over here. You by doing that, you show that she's the embodiment of all the gods, but that means she's the embodiment of everything. That like Krishna shows the cosmic form, right? The Devi herself in our text will eventually show the viśva-rūpāḥ, the Virat-swarupa, the universal form, that everything is her and she is everything. So this painting, I think, nicely matches, I think, the intention of the verse here, right? So the goddess who is speech, or speech that is a goddess, that is divine, right? So it says, so let me get back to my notes here. Devīṃ, we'll go word for word a little bit as far as per what I could figure out, what we could figure out. Devīṃ, of course, the goddess, a goddess, right? Vācam, the goddess Vācam, speech, this goddess who is speech who is a goddess. And then this word ajanayanta. Ajanayanta means to cause to be born, right? To generate, to beget, something like this, right? So devā-stāṃ. Devā-stāṃ means established by the gods, right? So the god and the deva here, the long a makes it plural. So the gods, the multitude of gods, the pantheon of gods, whatever you think they are, or whatever you think they represent, right? They generated and established the goddess speech. That's one way to understand the sentence, or that part of the sentence, right? And that's the way he has, our Professor Brown has, Mackenzie Brown has done it. The gods created the goddess speech. So what's interesting, though, Vācam, Vach or Vak or Vag, right? It has all you'll see it in different ways according to Sandhi principles, right? How the word becomes. So the goddess Vach, you usually think she's the one that creates the world, but here the gods have created her, right? How is that? What does that mean? That's a mysterious thing. What does that mean? Right. And then the second part of that first line, viśva-rūpāḥ paśavo vadanti. viśva-rūpāḥ paśavo vadanti. He has translated whom all sorts of viśva-rūpāḥ in many different forms, right? Paśavo, animals, vadanti, speak, right? So the gods made, established, gave birth to the god of speech, right? Whom all types of animals speak, right? So the gods created the goddess of speech, whom animals of all sorts speak. So to understand that, we have to let's go a little bit into the nature of Vach, and then see how it could be that the gods created her and that all animals apparently speak her, right? And let's see. Let me get out of this real quick. If I can get this, I can see who we're talking to here. Stop share. Okay, you can see. Okay. So Vach or Vak or Vag, in the Vedas, there are some important hymns. So she's one of the important goddesses. There's not many goddesses central in the Vedic hymns. Vach is one of them, right? So she's important in that sense for us. And in the stories, in the Brahmanas, which are one section of the Vedas, some mythologies with stories and leelas are told about her. And in the Puranas, she also comes a little bit, but usually older. She's an old, all the gods are antique, but they're all ancient and eternal. But she's definitely an antique god. I mean, she's not like Saraswati and Lakshmi and Durga, ones that are being worshipped actively in the present bhakti, right? So she's a Vedic deity, and we worship her now maybe as Saraswati, right? We think, oh, she's Saraswati, right? And therefore, by doing Saraswati puja, we're worshiping Vach, right? But Vach was her own deity before her connection was goddess Saraswati. But there are connections to her. So in some of the ancient stories, she is the wife of Indra, right? So the king of the gods. She is the daughter of Kashyapa Muni, and so there's connections to like that. So her name means speech, and what does speech do? Speech reveals things, right? And she is revealed through speech. So she is a goddess who is speech, but she is revealed through speech, which means when we speak, we're revealing her, right? So that's a very interesting, mysterious thing to say, that we reveal the goddess by our speech, right? So sometimes we could think, what type of goddess are we revealing? We reveal according to how we speak. Our words are really important. And you'll see this verse will end showing how when she's well-spoken, we get blessings, right? So there's a thing to this. Okay, here. Yep. Who's yes?
Oh, yeah, I think she's also kind of morphed into Gayatri.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about that. She's definitely seen as Gayatri.
Yeah.
Definitely seen as Gayatri. Yeah, we'll talk about that. Mm-hmm.
She's also the alphabet goddess. That's
yes.
how she's the sound of everything.
One second. Thank you. Yeah. Well, luckily, very good. We'll talk about that. So if she is revealed through speech, Vak is also characterized by various attributes and uses of speech, right? So all the different uses of the speech and the things we can say about speech, because even how I just said that, the things we say about speech, right? The things we say about saying things, right? Those are the way she is revealed. Vak's character is in the Brahmana section of the Vedas. She's connected, and the Brahmana, maybe we haven't talked about this in a long time, or in this class even, generally speaking, if we separate, the four Vedas, and each Veda is is organized into 4 sections. You have the samhitas, the hymns. You have the brahmanas, which are the ritual texts on how to use those hymns. You have the aranyakas. These are very simplistic and definitions that are very much more porous and fuzzy at the end as the edges, like we think. But then you have aranyakas, which are called forest texts that are a little bit more contemplative and symbolic about these rituals. And then you have the Upanishads, which are almost separated from the rituals, completely take them only entirely symbolic about the nature of Brahman and Atman and things like this, right? So brahmanas are ritual texts, right? And so Vak is really important in ritual, right? So there her images and the stories and images emphasize her her connection with ritual speech, right? So it's like, what's the difference between regular speech and ritual speech? Ritual speech is used in ritual, right? We sometimes think, oh, maybe we do a ritual action and then along with speech act, right? But by speech, right? But ritual speech is even more, and Vedic ritual speech is even more powerful, right? The speech is the action. It's not like we have something to core. I do something, and then there's a word that sanctifies it or says what I'm doing. It seems like that, but saying it does something. That's how powerful speech. If speech can do something, if speech creates the ritual, has an effect, right? Speech is an action that has an effect, just like a physical action has an effect. Speech is an action, has an effect, right? How powerful speech is. Therefore, we speak the goddess into existence, right? Right. So Vak's her indispensability to the understanding of ritual, right? Makes, how do I say it? Because of her, because now I'm dealing with a little bit with some kind of myth around her without going into all her stories. We don't have time for it. Remember, again, the point of the commentary is to why she's being mentioned here, right? In this text, not in the original ancient world, right? There's stories where the gods, wanting to control the power of sacred speech, right, articulated, powerful action speech, right, stole her, right? And then, so there's the thing that the gods actually stole Vak, right? There's stories like that, right? And there may be even references a little bit to that in the verse at hand, right? Without her, rituals are not possible. Without her, attainment of heaven is not possible. Without her, the gods have no power. Without her, the gods cannot be fed and lose their position. She's very important, right? Also in the Brahmana, she's connected often to Prajapati. So the supreme deity in many of the Brahmanas is Prajapati. Prajapati, we get this idea of the progenitor, the creator. Like in popular Hinduism, Brahma is a Prajapati, the creator, like a demiurgic creator. But in the Brahmanas, it's Prajapati is almost equivalent to Brahman, almost interchangeable with Brahman, or Brahman, right? So Prajapati, the progenitor, his consort is Vak, right? And so as consort of Vak, so that means that he's a progenitor and she is the one by which he progenerates, the one by which he creates, the one by which he expresses, right? So one text says that when having been created by Prajapati, remember the gods speak to her into existence. Here, Prajapati speaks her into existence. She wants to express, she wants to extend herself, right? And so the creation is produced, right, by Vak's urge to create. That means speech's urge to manifest, to express, creates the world, right? And so even in tantric puja, this becomes important. In our homa fires, if many of you have probably seen us do our homas during Amavasya, there's a moment where we draw in the center of the fire pit, we draw a special yantra. And in the yantra, we meditate upon Vāgeshwara and Vāgeshwari, the Lord of speech and the goddess of speech. And then once again, in popular imagination, we think of that as Brahma and Lord Brahma and Saraswati, but actually it's Prajapati and Vak, right? So this is the same idea, right? From their union comes articulation, comes manifestation, becomes vibration, right? Comes sound, right? So you can see this becomes the foundation of these are Vedic verses, Vedic themes, Vedic archetypes or evidence that then gets developed in the tantras into this idea of Shabda Brahman, and this idea that from that the creation, the world comes from sound, right? We've talked, and every time I do this, I feel a little embarrassed because it's almost overly, it's quite simplistic, but just to wrap your head around it, from the one absolute consciousness, there seems to be somehow another, a pulse, a vibration, they call it a spanda, right? Or a bindu, a drop, or a pulse or a dot, right? That first pulse of vibration vibrates within the field of consciousness expanding itself into a world of objectivity. Now you have consciousness aware of something vibrating in itself. It vibrates itself and then is aware of its own vibration. These are very simplistic, but that's a way of understanding this world of expanding multiplicity, as well as a subject-object relationship between where within consciousness, now we see things within consciousness. Within Prajapati, now by the power of his articulation, he's now created a world of duality, and therefore a world of multiplicity. Multiplicity, right, of variegatedness and expansion and expression, but duality here, I mean ontological duality of subject-object. Now he's a subject, the self is a subject, Brahman is a subject, Prajapati is a subject, however you want to think of it. Now seeing his own vibration within his own awareness. Very simplistic, but that's we find seeds of it even in the Brahmanas, in the Upanishads, with goddess Vak, right? Looking for commentary, right? I couldn't find the comment. I'm sure there's commentaries on these verses in Sanskrit or Hindi. I couldn't find anything that I could immediately dip from, right? But I found just one line by Sayana. Sayana Acharya is a very famous commentator he commented on the entire Vedas, right? In a huge endeavor. He was 1387, the year he passed away. He was in the Mimamsa school, of theologian of the Mimamsa school, right? But he did this great line, right? Very poetic, right? The thunder entering into all beings, right, becomes a speaker of dharma or moral truth, right? What a beautiful idea. He's the thunder that enters into all beings, right? So think about that. Whether he creates all beings, that thunder creates all beings, but it's the animating principle. It's prana. Another way of saying it's a prana within all beings, the life, the energy, the shakti, right? Let's go back to the verse here. Let's ground it in our verse. I'm getting distracted by the sublimity of the idea of Vak. Okay. Viśva-rūpāḥ paśavo vadanti. So Vak, she's created by the gods, whatever that means, by her speech, and she's whom all animals speak. So what does it mean all animals speak? That same Sayana Acharya, he also explains something, right? Because I'm thinking not all animals speak. Humans speak really, maybe I'm going to have to be careful what I say, because obviously animals do speak. They communicate in their own way, right? And we don't know how some animals are likely to have extremely sophisticated forms of communication, very different from ours, right? Not all humans speak and communicate in the same way also, right? So you can see how many languages and styles of languages and subtlety and grossness of languages, right? So not all even humans speak the same, right? So but I was actually thinking, I've always kind of stumbled like who all animals speak. Does animals speak in the way we speak, the way the gods speak, and the way humans speak? So let me find. Sayananda says, animals of every kind. That's viśva-rūpāḥ, right? Animals. It means Vishwa means this verse, this line, Swami Bhajanananda Thakur's disciple interprets viśva-rūpāḥ means all pervading, right? Most interpret it to be various kinds, right? The two can be connected because all pervading could be, oh, there's a universal consciousness or Shakti or energy that's everywhere. That's viśva-rūpāḥ, shown by this painting. But if it's animals, animals everywhere, all kinds of animals everywhere. Everywhere you go, there's beings, there's creatures, right? Animals. And here the word for animal is paśavo. Paśavo, we'll describe it in a second, flesh it out a little bit what's meant, right? So viśva-rūpāḥ could be various types of animals, or everywhere you find animals of various types, right? So, or it could just not refer to the animal, it could just be that goddess whose speech, who gods have established and given birth to, is everywhere, the universal. Could be that way too. Like I said, it's poetry. It seems to be a sophisticated poetry that we may be missing the full proper interpretation of it. Because I see very respected scholars and sadhus interpreting this verse very differently. So I just want to say that we're a little bit complicated, right? But so anyways, Sayana says, whether they're animals of every kind, he glosses that line, animals of every kind, whether their utterances be articulate or inarticulate. So it's interesting, like we speak, I mean, some of us speak more articulate than others, or less articulate than others. We articulate, but not all speech is articulate. So those whose speech is inarticulate, which is so interesting. So maybe it's not just sophisticated sound, it's all sound, not even sound, all forms of communication, theoretically, is vach or vak, right? So pasha. Here, the word pasha for animal, pasha vadanti, all animals speak, right? Pasha means beast, right? But it comes actually, it means bound beings. Pashu, a pasha is a noose, right? And so the idea of like you think of a domesticated animal is something, an animal you put a rope around his neck, or her neck, or its neck, right? Or even a dog on a leash, right? That's like it's bound, right? There's an animal, a beast, and that's the pashu. There's the pasha, the thing that defines it, that binds it, and then the pashupati, which is the name for Shiva or God, is the one who controls it, the Lord of animals or beasts. So we are all, so by pashu generally means all bound beings, and we're all bound beings. Not only beings before liberation, all beings are bound in one sense. Especially in Shaivism, there's in most schools of Shaivism, many schools of Shaivism, that Shiva is the only Pashupati. He's the one who controls all beings, and we're all controlled. We're all bound in some sense, at least in the sense that we're individual, and therefore bound by our own limitations as individuals. Of course, some schools of non-duality will threaten, or not threaten, but question the how bound we are, right? And maybe that we become Pashupati when we become free, right? But that's not generally how it's understood. So all beings, so it's not just all animals, all created beings or creatures. So we're not really created, but I think you know what I mean. All dependent beings, maybe that's a better word. All dependent beings, right? God is independent, we are dependent in some sense, in devotional schools especially, right? So that's what this first means. Let's go into the second before we're gonna keep going here. Let's see here. Let me find my sa no mandreṣam-ūrjaṃ duhānā, right? Sa no, sa naha. Sa means she, right? So who is she? This is Vak, right? The goddess of speech, who is speech, right? In his translation, I don't think he mentioned she, but it says this speech is pleasing to us. But this means she is pleasing to us. She, who is the goddess of speech, is pleasing to us, right? I think it's important. Naha, unto us, right? Ūrjaṃ duhānā. Ūrjaṃ duhānā. This means sa naha mandreṣam-ūrjaṃ duhānā, right? She is mandara. She brings pleasant things, wonderful things, right? Mandra means charming, pleasant, pleasing, right? So she, when pleased, that's what the final verse will say, brings us, she's the one that brings us pleasant things, right? The things that we're hungry for. And what are those things? Ūrjaṃ. This means strength, refreshment, vitality, food, vigor, right? So she gives us those things, those wonderful things that bring us, that give us health and vitality and strength and courage and happiness, like this, right? Duhānā dhenur. So ūrjaṃ duhānā, and then the next line, the second slide, dhenur means, duhānā means milk, and dhenur means cow. Dhenur is the udder of a cow. It's a name for cow. So she is like milk to us. She's like a cow that feeds us these wonderful, pleasant things as her milk, right? And thus feeds us, and thus gives us strength and courage and happiness and success, all the things we need to refresh. Just like by drinking milk, we get strength, right? So she is the cow that gives us milk. And so this is important. This means, so this is contributing to her, to another form of the goddess or quality of the Mahadevi, or a different goddess, as Kamadhenu, right? The wish-fulfilling cow, right? And so she's the one that's fulfilling all, she's, by her milk is what's feeding us and giving us, fulfilling our desires. She's these wonderful desires, right? So in here. What is that milk? What milk does she give us? So this has been given in the Brahmanas and other texts, kind of some hints of this, right? If we take them in collection, right? She is speech and articulation. So what does speech give us? Speech we speak and engage refined speech in different levels, right? So she is the lofty speech of the rishis, right? She is the lofty and discerning. A rishi is a seer, one who understands. She is the speech of mantras of the rishis, and she is rishis who perceive, who can discern the essential and the non-essential, the reality, the divinity, like this. So she is the lofty discerning vision of the rishis. She is the ritual formulas, the mantras of the priests, like we use in puja, right? So for the rishi, she is discernment, right? And vision. For that's the milk that the rishi drinks, right? By their understanding of ak, right? And the priest or the ritualist, the ritual experts, engage her in the mantras of the Vedas, the ritual mantras, right? And then the third, for what about us, right? We speak to communicate with each other. We express our feelings, our emotions, our desires, our disappointment, our anger, our love, our friendship through speech, right? Speech, articulate and inarticulate. That means nonverbal speech, all kinds of speech, right? All kinds of articulation and non-verbal articulation. Maybe we can say it that way. So the third is she's our everyday language, not just the sermon of rishis, not just mantras of the ritualist, right? She's our everyday language by which we, common people, I should trying to be ritual experts and rishis, but they're at our level, right? That allows us to establish ourselves together as a community, right? Community of friends, a community of society, of sangha, right? So these are part of the milk that she gives, that the commentaries have shared, right? So I've listed in my own notes the three categories. For the rishis, she's divine vision, discernment. For ritual, for the priest, she's ritual language, the formulas, the mantras of this divine liturgical speech, powerful speech. And the third, for us in the everyday common world, she's the way we communicate. She gives us, therefore, our world of experience, our world of emotion and relationship with each other. So this line at the end, right, what did it say? Dhenur-vāg-asmān-upa, and then it says vāg-asmān-upa suṣṭutaitu, right? Vāg-asmān, that's vak, asman, that her, that goddess. Sa means she, who, vak, vag here is the same by the sandhya, vak becomes vag, right? So that vak, right? Asman, to us, right? Right? Upa, towards us, towards, right? So that those blessings, right? The milk that the goddess of the goddess gives, right? The pleasant things that she can offer us, right? We're praying to bless us, give us that milk, right? Unto us, O mother, O goddess Vak, O goddess speech, right? Bless us. How? Suṣṭutaitu. Suṣṭuta, short A, sorry, means, stu means well or good or properly, right? Stuta means praised. So I think he translated as she is well played. She is well praised, right? Properly praised, right? Worthily praised is one, I saw one translation say. She is worthily praised. But that means, of course, she's worthy of praise, but we should also praise worthily, properly, correctly. That means, what does that mean? It could be many things. Some it means with emotion and concentration and feeling, or with knowledge. Or it could mean for other things with proper pronunciation, right? You know, so the gods here, this is, I believe, this is a little bit of a, how it's being used in this story. They see the Devi get overwhelmed and start speaking, right? They're speaking properly, right? It says, with regulation we're worshiping you, right? So they're praising her with Vedic mantras. They're praising her with these chaste, beautiful verses with deep meaning. They're using the proper mantras to praise her in order to elicit a blessing, right? The blessing of her milk. As Kali, she is well praised. It also means pronounced properly. The suṣṭuta means pronounced properly, but it has a second meaning. It means that, but it's come to mean because how important proper pronunciation or proper worthy praising has come to mean. You don't get the bless, like if a mantra without being a mantra or a prayer works if you chant it properly, or if you think of it like a magical formula, that has to be recited properly, pronounced properly, with a proper ritual action. So that has to be done properly in order to get its result. But if it's emotion, if it's out of devotion or desperation or longing, then the suṣṭuta means with emotion, right? Without that, it has no power, right? So it works when it's done, whatever it requires to be whatever the proper way, either proper pronunciation, proper ritual action, proper understanding, or proper emotion, or anything in between that, right? The language of the heart is the real language. Our Guruji Swami Bhajanananda recently, Swami Ambikananda was also saying that and he often says, there's only one language, the language of the heart, that gets spoken in so many languages. So maybe that's the suṣṭuta, right? But when it's done properly, it works, right? We communicate with God, or we communicate with each other, and we get the result. We get the milk from that. We get the milk by properly speaking. We get the milk, right? So it becomes to mean that suṣṭuta also means prosperity. It also means welfare. It also means more, still more. I mean, abundance, or getting even further, right? Because you don't get welfare and prosperity and more if you can't express it, right? The expressing it brings that nectar, it brings that milk, right? Proper speech brings blessings. Let's just say that proper speech brings blessings, right? That's a nice way of saying it, right? Now let's go back to our story. The gods are praying to, what blessing do they want? Right? Of course, there is a blessing that they're invoking, right? That she gets born as Parvati, marries Shiva, has Kartikeya, and Kartikeya in 7 days will kill Tarakasura. There's an ultimate prayer, but that's not their immediate prayer. They're not thinking about Tarakasura right now, right? They're overwhelmed with emotion, crying, choked, hair standing on end, seeing the goddess, right? So what blessing does their proper speech invoke? Their proper speech invokes the blessing to properly speak, right? This is I think how it's being. This is I think why it's being used here. Of course, it's being used for all those reasons of showing she's Vedic, showing it's ancient, all those things that we've discussed, right? But I'm just taking it fully in the story, right? How we to take it, right? They need her blessings for what? They need to communicate with her properly, that they get the blessings to be able to communicate with her properly. And you can see this is what, even in human relationship, you communicate properly, that allows proper communication, doesn't it? Right? Nothing ends communication than bad communication, right? This is good communication, brings good communication. They want the words to speak. And you can see as they move forward, they'll have a beautiful conversation with the goddess. We haven't even gotten to the goddess saying yet. The Devi Gita is the teaching of the goddess. This is our 29th or 26th lecture. So many 46 verses, we haven't heard her say anything yet, right? So there's no Devi Gita yet. It requires, to get a Devi Gita, requires Devi Gita, it requires us to speak properly, to sing properly, to ask the proper questions in the proper way. So this is how I understand a little bit this verse. It's mysterious for sure. I want to share just Swami Bhajanananda brought this beautiful verse, quote to my attention by Alain Deniliu, right? If you know him, he's a very colorful scholar of a previous generation. He lived many years in India. Especially focusing on music and ragas. He wrote some of the most authoritative collection on ragas. So this is quoted from this quote is taken from a quote from Joseph Campbell, from the Joseph Campbell book, right, where he's quoting from Alain, I never pronounce his name, Deniliu, very French name, where he himself is quoting in this book on the musical scales. He's quoting from a Shaivite Purana or Shaiva sloka or some sort, right? So about Vak, right? And this idea, remember we talked about from that one vibration comes all vibration, from that one speech act, that's one vibration, how the one sound becomes everything. We should ground it in this, because I think we shouldn't get too far away from this little. It's a Vedic idea that's developed in the tantric world, and which is one of the important themes of the Devi Bhagavatam and Devi Gita. So he says the initiating point, bindu, so that's, I mentioned, the spanda, or that visual thing, desire is to manifest the thought which it holds of all things. So the Supreme thinks in a thought, holds all things, right? Desires to manifest that, vibrates, right? That vibration is sound. That vibration is speech. That vibration is Vak in the ancient goddess, right? Desires to manifest the thought which it holds of all things, vibrates, transformed into the primordial sound of the nature of a cry. And this is the uniqueness of this particular writer, right? We wouldn't define nada or sound, or divine sound or shabda as a cry. But I love this idea that it says it in the next sentence, it shouts out the universe. right? How beautiful. I love that idea. It not just speaks the universe or articulate, it yells the universe into existence. It shouts the universe. It's just a beautiful image that's unique to this particular writer, right? It shouts out the universe, which is not distinct from itself. It creates a universe by speech that's not different from itself. That is to say, it thinks it. Hence the term shabda, word, because a word is not just a sound. Shabda is not just as a sound, it's a word. A thought is a sound that's a thing, right? It thinks it, shabda. Meditation is a supreme word. It sounds, that is to say, vibrates, submitting all things to the fragmentations of life. This is how it is nada, vibration. This is what is meant by the saying, sound, which is of the nature of nada, resides in all living beings. So he's quoting from a Shaivite Sutra, sound, which is the nature, shabda, sound, which is nature of nada, vibration, resides in all living beings, right? As what? As us, as existence, as prana, as thoughts, right? As the duality of awareness, of consciousness and of subject and object, right? Mysterious verse for sure. So, let's look at the verse real quick one last time before we move on. The gods created the goddess speech, whom animals of all sorts speak. This speech is pleasing to us, this cow yielding food and strength. She is well praised. May she come to us. May she come to us being well praised. Vāk. So the next verse also is from that same collection, from that same Devi Gita, from the Atharva Veda and from the Rig Veda. This one's a little less complicated to get at its obvious meaning. Its word meaning is simple. Kāla-rātrīṃ brahma-stutāṃ vaiṣṇavīṃ skanda-mātaram sarasvatīm-aditaiṃ dakṣa-duhitaraṃ namāmaḥ pāvanāṃ śivām. So now it's addressed. I use a different picture of the tree as the picture I chose just to demonstrate a little bit the flavor of the verse is showing her as the tree Devi, something call it a tree Devi. Because we have the Trimurti in popular Hinduism as Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, right? And so they're the equivalent of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. They have consorts. Brahma's consort is Saraswati, who is Vāk, right? A form of Vāk, perhaps, a later form of Vāk. Vishnu's consort is Lakshmi, right? And Shiva's consort is Parvati, right? So this verse hits on the three and more, right? Showing that she, the one being addressed, the one they're seeing, is also the one that's known as the consort of other deities, but not really the consort of other deities, because in all the things that they mentioned, she's not really the consort. She's the Shakti of other deities, right? We've talked about in the Chandi, the Devi is not the consort, the wife of Shiva or the wife of Vishnu. He's the Shakti of Shiva, the Shakti of Vishnu, right? The essential power, right? So it's a little different. So it starts kāla-rātrīṃ. She was kāla-rātrīṃ. Maybe you know there's a goddess, a tantric goddess called kāla-rātrīṃ. Kāla-rātrīṃ is a very fierce goddess. She's worshipped as part of the Nava Durga, right? And we have these during Nava Durga, but she is a form of Kali, and she's actually one of the earliest mentions in the Puranas of Kali. Is probably a kāla-rātrīṃ mentioned in the Mahabharata and in a ghastly scene, right? But here it says praised by brahma-stutāṃ, praised by Brahma. That means that she is praised by. That means it's referring to specifically. Kāla-rātrīṃ praised by Brahma refers to a verse, a scene in the Devi Mahatmyam, right? At the first chapter, Devi Mahatmyam, it says, verse 78, Devi Mahatmyam, Lord Brahma prays for the goddess, trying to awaken Yoga Nidra. She exists. Vishnu is asleep. Two demons, Madhu and Kaitava, come attack. He needs to wake up Vishnu to fight Madhu and Kaitava and survive, right? So he starts, Tvam Swaha, Tvam. You are vibration, you are mantras, you are Om, very similar to this Vāk idea. right? We're praising you. Wake up, please. Wake up. Withdraw your energy, your sleep energy, your tamaguna from Vishnu, which may represent consciousness here, and fight Madhu and Kaitaba. That's a different story. Many of you already know this story. This is referred to that. So in that hymn, in verse 78, it says, Pakritis tvam cha sarvasya gunatraya vibhavani kāla-rātrīṃ. There it is. Kāla-rātrīṃ, maharatri, moharatri, stadharuna. You are the primordial matter, differentiated into the threefold qualities of everything, the gunas of everything. You are kāla-rātrīṃ, the dark night. You are maharatri, the great night. You are moharatri, the terrifying night of delusion, right? So this is a reference to her, this power of Devi as kāla-rātrīṃ, the dark night, which represents tamaguna and ignorance, which she's actually, by praising her, you are tamaguna, withdrawal, you are sleep, let me wake up, let him wake up, right? So even tamaguna is divine, right? So kāla-rātrīṃ, praised by Brahma, the goddess referred to in the opening chapters of the Chandi, Devi Mahatmyam. You are vaiṣṇavīṃ, you are Vaishnavi, right? Lakshmi, right? The goddess, but remember, she's not Vaishnavi. Vaishnavi is not Lakshmi, the god as in the wife of Vishnu, but the Shakti of Vishnu. You are Vaishnavi, the Shakti of Vishnu, and you are skanda-mātaram. Skanda-mātaram means the mother of Skanda, means Parvati, right? Which is interesting. They're choosing a month. You can see there's some problems in the timeline. They're praising her as Skanda-māta, right? But one of the boons she's eventually going to give in this text is to be born as Parvati to give birth to Skanda, Kartikeya, right? So they're praising her before she was born. We'll leave that as it is. Ancient, mysterious are the ways of the gods, right? You are Skanda-māta, the mother of Skanda, right? Saraswati, you are Saraswati, right? Another now a little different than Vak, but Saraswati. You are Aditi. Aditi is a mother of the gods, right? And Aditi is a very important, also Vedic. This is a Vedic deity, Aditi. You are dakṣa-duhitaraṃ. You are the daughter or of Daksha. You are Sati, the daughter. Her previous incarnation was Sati, right? And daughter of Daksha. So you are kāla-rātrīṃ, the dark night. That's the fearful dark night that has been praised by Brahma. You are Vaishnavi, you are Skanda-māta, you are Saraswati, you are Aditi, you are Sati, the daughter of Daksha. This is a very nice list. Each one of them we can talk hours on each one of these names. We won't, right? But then it says namāmaḥ, we bow. It's simply that's why this verse is a little more simple, right? Even though the meaning is big, it's connecting the goddess who they see, the goddess Bhuvaneshwari, the goddess of this text, right, as the Mahadevi who is known by many names. The idea, that some people say, the Mahadevi idea is false. That's a later Sanskritization, and there's a whole thing of it's denying these individual traditions of the different goddesses and trying to make them one big goddess, right? There's a movement against the Mahadevi idea, right? But the Mahadevi idea is even there in the Rig Veda. The Mahadevi idea is there in the Atharva Veda. They are in the Chandi in so many places, right? So because that one goddess is Vak, that goddess is Durga, that goddess is kāla-rātrīṃ, Vaishnavi, Parvati, Saraswati, Aditi, Sati, right? This is the goddess we bow. We don't bow to all of you separately or in a group. We bow to you, who are all these goddesses, right? Then pāvanāṃ, śivām. You are the pure. Pāvanāṃ means pure, right? And you are śivām, auspicious, right? We're out of time, but I'm going to do this last verse because it's very easy, right? This is also from the same collection. These 5 verses are chosen from the Devi, from the Atharva Veda Devi Upanishad, right? So this is a Gayatri mantra. Mahalakshme cha vidmahe sarva shakye cha dhimahi tanno devi prachodayat. This is a Gayatri mantra. Of course, many you probably know of the Gayatri mantra. There's a mantra called Gayatri mantra, also known as the Brahma Gayatri or Surya Gayatri or Savitri mantra or the Vedic Gayatri. We do it with different names. That's considered a very important mantra that's used in japa and meditation. Nowadays, it gets put on CDs and played with guitar and things like that. It shouldn't be. It's mantra is provided silently after initiation as per tradition, right? But there's other Gayatris also. Some hold that the popularity of the Vedic Gayatri, who is the mother of the Vedas. Actually, I forgot to mention. Edie mentioned as we started that Vak is also considered identical to Gayatri, right? And she is the mother of the Vedas. The 3 Vedas come from her, right? So this is also connecting all these goddesses, right? But the popularity of this Vedic Gayatri mantra has found in the Tantras and Puranas, Vedic or Puranic or Tantric Gayatris. Usually these are Gayatris that are to certain deities, to Vishnu, to Krishna, to Radha, to Nrsingadev, to Shiva. Many of you, Tatpurushaya Vidmahe Mahadevaya Dhimahi Tano Rudra Prachoryat Shiva Gayatri. Ekadandaya Vidmahe Vakra Tundaya Dhimahi Tano Danti Prachoryat Ganesh Gayatri. Narayana Vidmahe Vasudevaya Dhimahi Tano Vishnu Prachoryat Narayana Gayatri. So these Gayatris like that. And some of them, and we believe, just like Vedic Gayatri was heard by Vedic Rishi, later Rishis, we believe, composed or heard or revealed these Gayatris to certain deities that are come down in Sampradaya. This is a Sampradaic tradition. So a Vaishnava would be initiated into Vishnu Gayatri or Radha Gayatri or Hanuman Gayatri according to their sect, according to devotion, like that. But some of them are also Vedic Gayatris, because this is a Vedic mantra. This is from the Rig Veda, this is from the Atharva Veda, right? So this form is also a Vedic mantra. There's many hymns, the Durga Shuktam ends with a Gayatri mantra, the Meda Sutra ends with a Gayatri mantra, right? So a lot of Vedic hymns have this type of Gayatri mantra, these sectarian or devotional based on a deity, not just to the sun and to the self that the sun may represent in the traditional Vedic Gayatri. So this is to Lakshmi, Mahalakshmi, to that great goddess Lakshmi, right? We know you as Mahalakshmi, the great goddess Lakshmi. We meditate upon you, Dhimahi, on who? Sarva Shakti, the one who is the Shakti of all, the Shakti of all. And then it says, Tano Devi, may that goddess, Tano Devi Prachoryat, illuminate me or inspire me. He's translated inspire that knowledge and meditation of ours, right? That's just the way he's translated it. Usually these other Gayatris for specific deities usually have 3 names. So this one, Mahalakshmi, Sarva Shakti, and Devi, right? In the Shiva mantra, Tatpurushaya, Mahadevaya, and Tatpurushaya Mahadeva, Deva Prachodaya, and Deva, right? So usually 3 names are there, right? And they get fit into the form, right? And the Gayatri is a particular meter, is 24 syllables for 3 lines. So it's a very particular meter. So it has to match the meter. If it doesn't always match, they add chas, ands, even if it doesn't fully make sense grammatically. So this is one, Mahalakshmi cha vidmahe, Sarva Shakti cha dhimahi. So there's other popular Gayatri mantras for Lakshmi, right? One of them is, do I write it down? Maybe not. Mahalakshmi cha vidmahe, Vishnu Patne cha dhimahi, Tano Lakshmi Prachodaya, Tano de Lakshmi Prachodaya. So Mahalakshmi vidmahe, the great goddess Lakshmi, Vishnu Patni, the wife of Vishnu, right? The one whose Vishnu is her husband. Vishnu Patni cha dhimahi, Tano Lakshmi, to that Lakshmi we bow. This is different. That's the most common mantra. I think it maybe even gets used at the end of the Sri Shuktam, perhaps, in common devotional recitations, right? This is different. Mahalakshmi cha vidmahe, Sarva Shakti. She's not the wife of Vishnu here. This is the Mahadevi, right? This is Vaishnavi, the Shakti of Vishnu. This is the Shakti of all, so Sattva Shakti. So the painting I chose here, this is by a very great Bengali artist that's working now in Calcutta, Dr. Argya Deepta, right? And if you want to, I've mentioned his paintings before on Facebook. You can look under Art Argya, A-R-T, Argya, A-R-G-H-Y-A, Argya, I think, to see some of his paintings. He's a tantric scholar and painter. So he uses this as a moment in the Chandi when the gods create the goddess. And usually we see the gods creating Durga, because the deity of the Chandi Dev Mahatmya is Durga. But actually some verses say they created this great Lakshmi. There's a Dhyan mantra of 16 arms, Lakshmi or something. There's all kinds of descriptions like that. So he's showing that this is the Rajasic aspect. They're creating the Shakti, the gods go together and they create this great goddess, right? But you can see down below, but actually they're not creating her, right? They are created by her. She's been separated into all these different Shakti, into all these individual Shaktis, right? Just like Vak, the one sound has come into all different sounds, right? So by creating her, they're reuniting the separated forms into one great form. The Maha, here shown as Mahalakshmi, the very tantric painting, Mahalakshmi. I like what Dr. Carr mentions about this. He says about this painting, the Rajasic embodiment who emerged from the combined energies of the gods in order to vanquish Mahishasura. Her own energies were lying diversified in the bodies of the gods, reunited into their source. And the gods witness all the diversity of the universe as contained in the vast cosmic body of the Great One, who underlies all creation. This is, I think, very significant because very often that scene of the gods creating the goddess can be seen. I mean, I've sometimes struck, I know that's so important that she's that they create her, but they don't create her, right? They reunite her, and you can see here what's coming. It's coming out of their mouth. They're speaking her in the. I don't have a way to make the picture bigger to show you, right? And they are like this. They're creating her, and they're like looking at her with hands in Anjali, right? They're witnessing. It's their realization that their individual Shakti that they thought with their energy, right, are my power, my prestige, my ability, my thoughts, my consciousness, even who knows how far it goes, right? Is really they witnessed that it's only her. As they see the great goddess become the Mahadevi take form, she will then destroy the great demon Mahishasura, right? So I think this is a good picture to match because this is Mahalakshmi as the combined energy of the gods, but not that they're creating her with their energy. They're witnessing that their little bits of energy are really her energy. They're seeing the unification of the separate individual parts into the great whole, right? Much like the gods in our story, right? In front of their vision, they're seeing the one supreme absolute being, right? And they use this mantra to pray to her. That great, may we meditate upon that, that we contemplate that great Mother Lakshmi, the great auspiciousness. We meditate upon who? The Shakti of all, right? Not all powerful, the power of all. There's a difference. She's not just first among many powerful beings. That's one way of thinking of Sattva Shakti. She's the Shakti of all. May that goddess inspire us, illuminate us, enliven us. She says, inspire that knowledge and meditation in us. Who's the goddess we're worshiping? Who's the goddess who the gods are seeing in the Devi Gita? Who's the goddess who will speak? Who's the goddess who we're meditating on and studying in our little class here on a Wednesday night, on a school night, right? It's the goddess who is the goddess of the power of all beings, who is speech, who is vibration, who blesses us when we speak properly, right? To all of our relationships, from the most highest divine realization to our friendships and family and loved ones and our interchanges with them, who is the fire of tapasya, who is the great goddess who creates, sustains, destroys, who is Mahamaya and Jiva and Atman and Brahman, all the different ways we've looked at the verses so far, right? So this is, we submit, this is not why I submit, the Devi Gita is presenting this goddess for our contemplation, right? There's a few more verses. The praise goes on, is moved from this collection of 5 verses from this text that they're quoting from the Vedic text, and they'll pull from other beautiful verses, which we'll share, God willing, next Wednesday. So we thank you very much for your kind attention and your patience, and trying to get back into the rhythm of textual exegesis and explanation. We haven't done this in several months, so I appreciate if you overlooked any faults in my speaking. So thank you for your kind attention. Are there any comments or questions? Let me get out of this here. Yeah, you can just unmute yourself if you want.
Yeah, I really like that photograph or painting. And it brought to my mind the mantra is, the mantras are the same as the stula form.
Yeah.
So these guys saying their mantras are calling forth this physical.
Yeah, that's a good, you're bringing up a very important development in Tantra. There's a view that the mantras create the forms of the deities. Usually we think, oh, there's somebody out there, there's a deity out there, and then they have a name, and so we can, and therefore the name refers to them or connects us to them or calls to them. But actually the mantra comes first in Tantra. In most schools of Shakta Tantra, the mantra is the real essence. The mantra creates the form of the deity. So you can see that's a beautiful image, that the gods are all speaking and creating her form, right? That's a beautiful thing, because that brings it back to the gods create the goddess, right? Who is speech, who creates it, who creates them. You know,
That's great.
Very interesting. It's very, very beautiful, very beautiful. You know, and of course you've spent years studying this form of Tantra that describes that, you know, so it gets very profound. I know for myself, when I first encountered that view, that the mantra is the deity, not the deity. The deity doesn't have a mantra. The mantra is the deity. It definitely jumbled. It was hard for me to change my position, you know, my view from it, you know. Still is hard for me to understand, because that's not how we normally think. But you can see how we normally think, how we normally speak creates one type of world. If we speak properly, another world is created. We can create gods and goddesses. Like, you know, very different. Joy. Excellent point. Anybody else?
Yes, thank you.
Dema.
So, the Vakdevi is constantly being revealed in speech, and yet also we are asking her to come to us.
Yeah.
And even as we're asking her to come to us, just saying that is also revealing her. But we're asking her to come to us in a different sense than the sense in which she's already here.
Yeah.
And the devas are asking her to be born in a body on earth.
Yeah.
And we might be asking her to come to us in some other sense too, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, maybe we're not asking for the exact same prayer the gods are, but we have our version of it. We need her, right? We need some blessing. And you could see sometimes we even, you know, just sometimes Usha had to tell somebody comes with some big problem. Some people, I mean, there's big problems. I have to tell you, just turn on the news. I mean, I almost can't watch the news this week, right? It's almost overwhelming, right? There's big problems, right? Usha will tell people, Ma is very powerful. You tell Ma. Don't tell me, tell Ma. Right? That itself has its own power. You know, it's like, there's something what they need to, sometimes we need to speak. Sometimes we don't have the words to speak. And so therefore, like the gods didn't have the words to speak, so they pulled from words that they knew, right? So that's what we do. And if somebody comes, oh, Swamiji, I don't know what to say, you play some prayer for me. I said, okay, we'll chant Muhammad Jai together, or we'll chant, like we give them the words. People, there is recently in our community somebody of a great loss due to an accident. What do? Oh, let's chant together, right? We can chant together, and we know when we don't know what to say, the sages in our tradition gave us something to say, right? It's like this month we use this mantra for that purpose. Our gurus have taught us this mantra for this purpose. Let's do this together. We have some faith and some experience. And we have faith that it does something. We have experience it brings milk to us for sure, right? But also sometimes, somebody like here at the temple, I'm just thinking about the power of articulation. Somebody will speak their problem, and I'm not a counselor. I don't have the ability. I don't have training. Some people are better trained, pastoral care, I think I'm better at this like that. But sometimes I think just saying it to us is saying it. Is saying the need, is saying or the problem or the pain or the need, right? And sometimes Osho will also say, oh, when you're speaking to me, Ma's hearing you. We don't know how to speak. Sometimes we don't know how to speak. We don't know how to speak to the goddess whose one eye is sun, the other eye is moon, and mouth is fire, right? But we can speak to the Swami or a friend or a priest or temple. It's like we can. Sometimes that's also speaking. Yeah, but anyways, I'm just vamping on that idea. Yeah. We all need the thing. The beautiful idea of milk, and the milk cow is all the commentaries mention that refers to the Kamadhenu, the one that fulfills all our desires. Not all our desires, because there is Ma can fill all our desires by fulfilling our central desire for Ma, right? But Kamadhenu doesn't generally mean that. It means she can fill any of our desires. Whatever we desire, we can come to her, and the milk, the cow gives that. Right, that's the idea. So we can whatever we want. It may be highest enlightenment, a union with Ma. It could be, not to feel lonely or not to feel separated or whatever we want, right? Where we can. This is what proper speech seems to be the key, right? When she's well spoken, her blessings come to us. Come to us by being. The mantra says, "Come to us by being properly spoken." How beautiful. This mysterious mantra for sure. Actually, it's been 3 months or 4 months since our last class. Those 4 months I'm going, what am I going to say about this first mantra? The other ones I can speak, I can fake my way through. We can fill the hour, right? But this one, it's I just like, oh God, I can't even, I've always been bewildered by this mantra, but never like, how do you, I guess sometimes you have to speak from your bewilderment. That's also a type of proper speech. So really we try to speak from some sense of knowledge of authority. Sometimes we're best to speak from bewilderment. That's also her form. Thank you. Any other comments? Speaking properly brings blessings, I'm telling you, according to the Devi. You should speak something.
Well, I'm late to the party, so if we've already discussed this, then we don't have to discuss it again.
Yeah.
But you mentioned sort of calling back to an earlier verse that the gods invoked Mother because they had a particular desire, but then when she came, they forgot about that desire.
Yeah.
And did you mention how similar that is to the story about Vivekananda asking?
Oh, that's a very good. Yeah, that's a very nice.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a beautiful. Actually, I really think that's actually a very powerful connection, right? So he's referring. Many of you already know that Swami Vivekananda, before he was Swami Vivekananda, he was young Narendra. His father died. He was from a wealthy family. His father was a lawyer, but without a proper will and lots of debts, right? And so when he died, the family went into extreme poverty. And so much so that they were hungry, and Swamiji or Narendra couldn't find a job. He worked and worked and worked, searching continuously for a job and couldn't get a job. He'd go days without eating, telling his mother, no, I ate with my friends outside. And it was really so that food would not be denied him and his brothers and sisters. So it was a really difficult situation. And then one day he said, it occurred to me that Kali listens to Sri Ramakrishna's prayers. When he speaks, she listens, right? It's properly spoken, she responds. And up to that point, Swami Vivekananda, he was a Brahmo person, right? He didn't believe in Kali. Even later, he said, I used to hate Kali, not just not believe in her. And I mean, that's more than not believe. I hated Kali in all her ways. What a statement, right? But then eventually I had to surrender to her. He said, this is how the surrender happened, right? So he went to Sri Ramakrishna and says, please pray to Ma, tell Ma to end the physical poverty of my family. Basically, let me get a job, let me, all that type of thing. Many people pray. I pray that way to Ma. We pray to Ma for that thing all the time. And Sri Ramakrishna said, he says, you pray to Ma, right? Why are you telling me to pray for Ma? You should. This is your prayer, not my prayer, right? He says, I don't know your mother, Swamiji said, right? So how can I pray to her, right? He says, it's because you don't pray to her that you're in this trouble, Swamiji said. Because you haven't prayed, you haven't spoken, that's why you're suffering. You don't accept her, that's why you're suffering. There's a powerful statement in there too, right? And so he says, oh, today's Tuesday, right? It's an auspicious day for the goddess. Go to the temple, she's living. Go and speak, and whatever you ask, she'll give you, right? That's a big statement with Sri Ramakrishna, if we think of who he is. And he had such faith in Sri Ramakrishna. He didn't have faith in Kali, but he had faith in Sri Ramakrishna, which made him have faith in Kali. So he went to the temple and seeing her alive, right? He forgot to ask, please let me get a job and end the suffering of my family, right? He asked, Bhakti Dao, Gyan Dao, Vairagya Dao, give me devotion, give me wisdom, give me knowledge, give me renunciation, right? He didn't ask for new job Dao, whatever other things he could ask, right? And then he was in an emotional mood, an ecstatic mood. And then he went back to Sri Ramakrishna's room. And Sri Ramakrishna, did you ask her? Did you ask her? No, I forgot. I asked for devotion. Oh, you're foolish. Now's your chance. Go back quickly. And he went back. And again, he forgot to ask, seeing her living, he forgot to ask for his seemingly small things. And then he went back. Again, it happens. Sri Ramakrishna, go back again. He goes, no, this is your trick. I don't believe it. You're doing this, right? You say, you give me the blessing that my family won't starve. Right, and then Sri Ramakrishna said, "Okay, they never want from simple clothes and simple food." Right, he didn't give them wealth, and didn't give him a good job either. Swami never got a good job after that, right. But he at least simple clothes and simple food, simple rice and cloth. They'll have simple food, simple clothes, right? So he got a blessing, right? But he had forgot what he got his real desire. His desire was for Ma, for God, right? But he thought his desire, he went to her for a job or whatever it would take to fix his financial problems, right? But then he still got the financial problem solved. So in the story of the gods, they pray to her and do all this austerity to get her vision. And then when she appears, they kind of forget what this is not what they're praying for. And then she kind of asked them, what did you want? He says, no, we're seeing, there must be a reason. There's a reason you invoked me. Oh yeah, Karaka Sura, if you could be born. Yes, it's like the original intent, the need, even though we may transcend the sting or the focus of our needs, right? The needs are still there, right? And so that's the thing, is that we get the praying to her, we get the milk we need, right? We get the milk of divine realization, we get the milk of happiness, and we get the milk of food and energy and financial security, if that's what we need, perhaps, right? So even if it's not really what we need, our ontological cry, our real need is deeper than whatever we think we need, right? But we get that also if we really need it. We get everything we need, and some things we want. So that's the amazing part. That's a very good point. That's a beautiful idea to connect the prayers of the gods with Swami Vivekananda's prayers. Any other points, questions, or comments? Your last chance to speak I can't say or forever hold your peace. You can
I was
hold
going
your
to say
peace until Wednesday.
something. I was going to say something. I came in
Yes.
late because it's been so long. I forgot how to get on Zoom and I couldn't get any sound.
Uh-huh.
But I'm glad I got here finally.
Good, good. Wonderful. You see, you couldn't speak. Yeah. Now you've spoken, so that's good. We can connect. Could you hear us at all or not?
I couldn't,
Oh.
I could hear, I couldn't hear anything. I just could
Okay.
see everybody laughing and I was missing
Oh.
it.
Yeah. Yeah, so it shows you one of the three types of milk is
I
friendship.
wanted to hear your stories about India and I was sure that's what you were talking about.
I think I may have actually been talking a few stories of India at that time. Perhaps people were asking. We can talk. We can have a office hour. We can talk our stories. Tell story. We can have a story time with. Oh, excellent. Well, dear ones, it's getting late, and so next week we'll continue. There's a few more verses, and then eventually, I think I'm not sure if at the end of this, it's been so long since I've looked at the text by itself, not just the verse I'm about to speak about. Because I'm not sure if Ma speaks in this chapter or she starts speaking in the next chapter, but we still have some more. This chapter still has some more, and it gets into even the God's prayer will get very Vedantic. The next little section will get into you are the one who is indicated by the mantra tat and twam, things like this. So it gets into very Vedantic and Upanishadic language, really emphasizing the nature of the goddess as Brahman. And of course, this is a major teaching of Sri Ramakrishna, that Kali and Brahman are non-different, right? That they're one and the same, and that the absolute truth is intrinsically dynamic, right? This is a foundation of Tantra, from principle of Shaktism, right? And a strong idea in many schools of Tantra, and a major, I think maybe the major theme of the Devi Bhagavatam, the Devi Gita, and of the Devi Bhagavatam. So we'll leave it there. Good night, everyone. Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Amaji.
Thank you.
Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Iri.
Jai Ma.
Jai Ma. Some new faces and some old, and can't say old faces we haven't seen in a long time. Happy to see everybody. All young faces that we haven't seen in a long time. Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Jai Ma Shamala, Jai Ma Giri, Jai Ma Michael, Shelby, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Jai Ma, Alex, Joe, Jai Ma, good. In the mysterious light you're in. Very nice. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om. We got two people in mysterious light. Jai Ma. All right. Om.